Swadika. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome today to the City Decoding and Transformation. You're here with me, Guitar Saruda Chusi, as your host. And today it's a great opportunity with us because we have one of the experts right here that are going to talk with us about a great challenges that he's having and joining in the States right now. So let's hear it from how is it going from community designs, about the civic management, the public spaces. How did it start? As a profession, for a professor to do that, as the first university to do that, how did it start and what is it for? And the inspiration of doing that, though, what does it get from that? And what does the community get from that as well? So we're going to listen to all of that today. So I'm here, I'm very honored to welcome Jeffrey HOU here, who is Director and Professor of Landscape and Architecture, Adjunct Professor of Architecture, Urban Designing and Planning, University of Washington, Seattle. I have to say in Thai, greeting you in Thai, Sawadika.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
Yes, I have to say morning from Bangkok, Thailand, but I'm not sure what time is it over there right now?
It is evening.
Okay, so no problem about the time in the different time zone here because, we have the technology right here. That's one good thing that I can share all this great information with you and you can share a lot of your knowledge with us as well.
Yes, okay, yeah, so looking forward to it.
We love to hear a lot from you because since you are the experts around here, I'm the one that I would be very happy to listen to and, gain a lot of knowledge from you today. So let's get started. So you're the expert from community designs, civic engagement here, public spaces, democracies, bottom-up resilience. So maybe you can give us some introduction of your profession, in the terms of urban development.
Yes, so my professional focus, as you have mentioned, has been on community design, civic engagement, and so on. And I'm primarily interested in how people, so citizens and communities, can become better involved in planning and design process that shape the environment that they live in. And since I'm a professor at the universities, so University of Washington, I don't have a sort of active professional practice in the traditional sense, but I have been involved with quite a few projects here in Seattle. And so, for example, I've served as a technical advisor to the Design Oversight Committee that oversaw the development of a framework plan for rebuilding our waterfront, our central waterfront that connected to our downtown. And so this has been one of the most important projects in the city's recent history. And I was also appointed by the City Council to serve as a member of the Citizen Oversight Committee for what's called the Pro Parks Levy. It's a funds that allocated for developments of new parks and open space in the city. And and also for the last 20 years or so, I've been involved pretty extensively in a number of community design projects in Seattle's Chinatown International District. And so these are just some examples of work that I've been doing, and the focus through all this work has been on the engagement of local stakeholders in planning and design that things that affect their lives.
So maybe I can ask you back, what were your inspiration? Because I saw that you start getting into these professions. What made you so inspired?
Well, I think part of it had to do with my own kind of education. So when I studied architecture, it was a pretty sort of a traditional training. We focus on, design of spaces, a lot of the concepts. But when I started practice, I realized how much is sort of disconnected from the everyday lives of people. And so I became interested in kind of ways that we can better connect, what we do professionally with what people are experiencing on an everyday basis.
So maybe that means that, from the education part that you study, mainly in architecture and landscape and all, but in real life, when you're getting on to work in these projects with urban development and architecture, is it like totally different?
Yes. So when we, typically in a sort of professional training, you deal with a lot of, technical aspect of design, right? Where things that are, more, conceptual, like we speak in a very different language that the ordinary people would speak, right? And so I find it, but when you work on an actual project, then you have to communicate to the community. You have to communicate to people who don't have the kind of technical knowledge. And so it's at that point I realized that that there are things that we need to do differently. And also I think at the community level, people actually have a lot of knowledge themselves. They know the site much better than we do. They have their local culture and things that have they've been practicing for a very long time. And these are the things that we can learn from as professionals as well to make our project kind of work better in the context of a local community.
So I heard you mention the word people, locals, community. So it means probably means that we learn from the book or maybe from your professions when it goes to the real urban development, when we're going to the actual place here, we do have to communicate a lot with the people, with the locals. Do you agree on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, communication is absolutely critical. I think oftentimes project kind of run into oppositions because of sort of problems that arise from communication, right? Or things that did not get communicated early enough in the process. And so as a result, people were not happy that they had not been consulted, or their opinion has not been taken into account. So that led to frustrations and opposition that might stall a project.
Yes, true. So it's like we, with the professions, you as the professionals, you have the knowledge, but the people, the local community and the people, they also have their own professions and knowledge as well. So it's
right. Yes. I mean, they may not have the kind of technical kind of language, but they still possess a lot of knowledge. How whether things work, what are the issues. What are the local assets, things that we can build on as professionals.
So from after joining in many projects as well, for some examples that you mentioned earlier, was there any obstacles or challenges that you faced with the local communities, the people?
Oh yes, there are many challenges that we have encountered and things that we have learned from as well. And so I think in Seattle, I think one of the common challenges is our ability to reach out to people, right? So for example, our city government often is actually quite eager to hear from people, but for a variety of reasons, it's not easy to collect input or hear directly from people. Right. So, first of all, like especially these days that we're inundated with so much information. Right. It's very difficult to, get people's attention. Right. And then secondly, there might be all sorts of, like cultural, social, and economic barriers. People may be busy with work. They don't have time. They have to spend time, taking care of their families, their businesses. They don't have extra time to participate. Right. Or there could be cultural and linguistic barriers as well that people don't always understand. This is what we just talked about in terms of communication. They don't always understand what is being presented at a public meeting, for example. Right. And then engagement can be very time consuming. Again, people may show up once or twice, and then they stop coming to the meetings, right? So you end up, in Seattle, you often end up with the same kind group of people that show up at the meetings, and you don't hear from a wider spectrum of kind of voices. And so even though we have a system in place that allow people to participate, people don't always participate as much as they can.
So
those
after
are
all that,
yeah.
after you faced through that obstacles, or how did you overcome that or solve that problems? You know, if the same group of people keep coming to the meeting, and then from time to time they're maybe they stop coming, and what are we going to do that after that?
Yeah, so we have to find a better way to reach out to people, to connect with people, right? So if they don't come to our meeting, why don't we join their activities, right? So things that people are doing already, events, festivals, when they go doing their shopping, we can go to where people are. All right. So, for example, instead of waiting for people to show up at our meeting, like in some of the projects that we have done before, we go to free meals programs in the program for senior citizens, right? Or we, in the United States, Thanksgiving is a very important holiday, and oftentimes, like in our community, there's this Thanksgiving dinners, like a big party with a lot of people. Right.
Yes.
So we go, set up a table at the dinner, and as they come into the dinner, as they are ready to, go home, we can, catch them, for a few minutes, and engage them in a conversation. Or like New Year events. This is also very popular for example, in the Chinese community. And so we set up like tables, and sometimes with like posters. And get people to interact with some of the things that we have prepared for them. So there are ways to kind of reach out to the community that may not seem like very formal, but they're actually quite effective in reaching out to people.
I actually love the idea of that because, from waiting for them to come to us, and then from eventually they stop coming to our meetings and all, but, then what? If we sit here and wait, nothing's going to happen. Right. So I love the idea of going out to see the people, meet with the people, with the festives or events that they already have, or from what you're mentioned here. That's a very brilliant idea. Maybe we can use that in Thailand as well, because I know it happens all over the world. When it comes to this kind of meeting, there'll be the same group of people, and then the amount of people get lesser and lesser from time to time for joining the meeting. So, we stop waiting for them. We go to see the people. We go and meet the people and talk with the people. Yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah, I think we could really use that in Thailand. So apart from that, from the people, from the local communities, any other obstacles that you face maybe with the private sectors or the government?
Sure. I think for some of the challenges for the private sector, for example, like it's people are constrained by the time that they have, right? They're often very busy, or they participate because they have a vested interest, to protect, right? So you have to kind of understand where people are sort of coming from, and design the process that make them feel that it's okay to share different opinions, right? And then for the government sector, oftentimes I think one of the challenges that we have faced before is that the project all have some sort of timeline, right? So if there's a delay, then a lot of government officers they feel that it creates problem for them, right? And so if we open the door for people to participate, oftentimes they are afraid that this might delay the process, right? But we have to kind of engage them in the conversation to find out why it's important to for people to participate, right? And so, for example, like I said before, if we don't communicate the issues or the proposal early enough, people may become very concerned, right? Or they may feel very strongly that they are not being consulted, right? So it actually creates more problem if we don't engage the community early enough in the planning and design process. And so that actually might cause more delay, right?
Yes.
Later
Of
on,
course.
right? So we have to kind of work with our partners in government, also in the private sector, to let them know that it's important. It's actually more efficient if you engage people early enough, right? And to communicate the project in the language that people can understand, right? And those actually will make the project kind of go much more smoothly than otherwise, right? So those are just some examples that we run into all the time.
So I guess that it's not just like you have a project and you just go there to the local communities and you tell them that, okay, I want to build something over here, or I want to do some development in this piece of land. But it's all about communicating with the people, the local community itself, and not only that, the private sectors, the government sectors. We have to work as a one big team.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, and also it's a two-way communication. So we, like the government and private sector, oftentimes they have a project that they want to introduce to the local community, and to get their buy-in, right? But oftentimes, like they can actually learn something from the local community in terms of like whether this is a good selection of sites for that particular project, or if there's something, if there's another location that might be better, right? Or if a program, the proposed program for a project, it could actually be modified in some way so that it actually will serve the local community better, or if there are ways that they, the things that they can do to approach a project differently, that actually may save their money, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah, so there are lots of ways that the project can benefit from engagement with the local community.
Yeah, so we all agree that communicating, it's very important to both. Every part, every sectors. Yes.
Yes.
And
yes,
apart from the obstacles or challenges that you have faced with, any concerns? Any concerns when doing a project or developing?
Concern from like what perspective?
In the perspective of going and developing that piece of land or area, any concerns that you would like to share? Maybe, we're facing the same thing in Thailand.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to, so for example, like I mentioned the waterfront project, right?
Ah, yes.
And so it's a project that has taken the city probably over 20 years to undertake, and it started out as a so it started over 20 years ago when there was a major earthquake. So there was some structural damage on the seawall, and also on the there's a raised kind of viaduct. It's an elevated freeway that runs along the waterfront. And because of the earthquake, there was a lot of damage structurally. And but initially the planning because that entire space is a roadway, so a lot of most of the planning proposal had focused on transportation, right? But the waterfront is also a great public space for people. And so what happened was that a group of civic organizations, they came together and then they worked on a charrette involving many professionals to focus on public space. And then the city government realized that it is a very important public space. And so we need to look at not only transportation issues, but also ways that we can create more open space on the waterfront, for people to gather, for people to visit, the waterfront's edge. It's actually great for the local businesses if we can bring more visitors to the waterfront, right? So by opening the opportunity to hear from more voices from different civic organizations, the project can actually become better, right? from the point of view of the local economic developments, from the point of view of creating a much stronger kind of identity for the city on the waterfront, right? And so that's another kind of benefit of kind of listening to the people, right? So like having more discussion, having more dialogue can actually make a project better.
Yes, so I think it all goes back to what we mentioned earlier, that communicating is like a first priority in all. So
Yes.
communicating, having the engagement with all sectors, which is very important as well. So the more you communicate, the more you engage, and you gain a lot of information, from both sides.
Right.
Yes, it really helps make the project success. So when I mentioned the word success, I was going to ask you the next one. I was curious about, maybe you can share with us your key success, because you've been through a lot of projects here. So what do you think are the key success from all the projects?
Yeah. So maybe I can focus on the neighborhood I've been working with for over the last 20 years. It's hard to kind of talk about kind of success in general. So in a lot of our projects in the Chinatown International District, for example, we have tried to address the issues and challenges I mentioned before. And for example, so instead of waiting for people to show up at the meetings, we join people where they are, right? So events and things like that. And one of the things that we have found out also when we do that is that these events, these activities, they constitute sort of a comfort zone for the local people, right? And so this is, the things that they're doing already. They're not entering a completely foreign, space, right?
They're actually still
in
their comfort zone.
Yeah. This is their space. This is their activity. They are surrounded by their friends, right? And so instead of like formal meetings that can be intimidating, especially for local people that they are not used to these kind of formal meetings. So one particular successful strategy that we have used quite often is actually to do open house events, right? So people can come at any time, and they're surrounded by their friends. They can join whenever is convenient for them, and they can have one-on-one conversation with staff and organizers. So that's kind of one successful kind of mechanism that we have used quite often. We have also focused on capacity building. So not just communicating that we have mentioned before, but also to actually train people so they can become more effective in communication, right? In understanding, technical languages, professional jargons, and to have experiences, going into meetings, right? And so one particular successful way of kind of building capacity that we have used before is actually to train young people in our community, right? And so like bilingual, young adults to facilitate meetings for our immigrant community, right? So these are students who grew up in the community. They are often, 1.5 or second generation, and so through these process, they become more involved in the community. They have greater ownership of the project that they're working on, and so that way they can become more effective in facilitating meetings in the future. And people who participate in those meetings, they're more comfortable going into meetings, so that in the future, when not just the project that we're working on, but future projects, they can become more effective as participants.
So I see that you're more focused on the people and the local communities. The more we can get them to interact with us, to engage with us, and they can be more closer to the project in the future project as well.
Yes. Yeah. So the idea is not just focus on the project we're working on, but sort of a long-term community process.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so it also advantages us in a way of our long-term project or future project that would come. It would make it more easier for the community or the local people to understand us and join us more.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the ultimate goal. The goal is so the long-term success of in the community rather than the project per se. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you can give us some examples of the project here. I've read about your works, and I was interested in the one called the HOU Park project. Maybe you can share that. What was that project about?
So HOU Park is one of 3 neighborhood parks in Chinatown International District. So the community I've been working with for the last 20 years. And the project we worked on was actually the expansion of a existing park. So the pre-existing park was maybe like a quarter of the block, right? And so the community received some funding from the city to expand the park so that the park can serve more people, right? Can become more functional. Right. And so we worked on the park since around 2012. So it's about 10 years ago. Okay. And at the time, the community was somewhat divided about what to do with the park. So on one hand, people were very concerned about safety. Right? So this is a downtown American city. Safety is a major concern. We have a lot of people, transient population. We have issue with drugs and things like that. It's not always safe. Unlike some other countries, it's not always safe to go to a downtown park. And so we have to overcome a lot of concern about developing, expanding the park, because when you expand the park, the park will be open to more people, and people don't always feel safe about others coming into the community. That's kind of one of the issues. The other issues is the issues of cultural identity, and so because the park is located in the middle of Chinatown. Our Chinese community feel that this is their park, right? It's a Chinatown park.
Okay. It's like their place, their safe zone for the Chinese community.
Yes. Yeah. But at the same time, our neighborhood is actually very multicultural. So we have people from, from the Philippines, from Japan, from Korea, from Taiwan. It's a very diverse community, and so we have to kind of balance, identity between the Chinese community with the other community. So those are. How
did you get all of them to, combine and one? That's a very big challenge.
It's a very big challenge. And fortunately, we had the fortune of working with Terraces. It's a landscape architecture firm based in Beijing. And so they know, it's a Chinese firm, so there's no question about their ability to create, a park that has a strong Chinese community. But they're also very open to, working with us to identify ways that we can create some sort of cultural bridge between the different groups. And so the design that they had proposed was to have this. You must have seen, I'm sure you have this in Thailand as well, this kind of terrace landform, rice terraces. Yeah, rice terraces, right? So on the hillside, they have this kind of terrace
landscape. We have that in Thailand, yes.
Yeah, so that you can grow rice or other kind of crops. So it's a very common landscape form throughout East Asia and Southeast Asia. You can find the same thing in China, in Korea, in Japan, in Taiwan, in Vietnam, in the Philippines, right? So this is a cultural heritage that we all share. So it's not Chinese, or it's not Thai, or it's not Vietnamese. This is something we all share. And so that became the design for the park. So we have this kind of terrace landform that everybody loves, because we can all identify with that that landscape. And so it's a design strategy that begin to kind of bridge the different cultural identity. So that was one of the kind of key success for the park so it's a park that we all can connect with, regardless of our different cultural identity.
Yes, because I think that in other countries as well, we also from time to time face that kind of problems where there are varieties of cultures, of peoples, and how do we solve that problem?
Right. So
these are very good examples.
Yeah, it's a good example also in terms of communication, because the design team was able to really kind of engage the community and hear from the community. So they realized that it's important to design a park that could serve as wide an audience as possible. So not just with one particular voice.
Okay, so that was the one problem about the different variety of culture and people, and then how did you overcome the one you said about the safety? Yes. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so what we have realized over the years of working in the neighborhood is that if we can bring more people to an open space, people will make the space feel safer, right? So like if a open space have very few people, people don't feel that it's safe to go in, right?
Yes, true.
Right. So by designing the park to serve as many people as we can, right? For example, to make the design function as a cultural bridge, so that different people from different cultural background, they all feel welcome in coming to the park. So that's actually one strategy of kind of bringing more people to the park. And also we design park in a way that they can serve younger people. It can serve the older people. There are places to sit, places to play, places for visitor to come. And if they we have a lot of restaurants in the neighborhood, right? So they can go buy takeout from restaurant and come and sit and eat in the park. There are tables and chairs for them to find a place to sit. And there are a variety of different places for people to gather. Right? There are also places for people to play ping pong. So by designing for a wider variety of activities, more people are more likely to visit a park. And when they do that, the park becomes much safer. So that's how we address the issue of safety.
Yes, I truly agree with that, because it's true. If there's no people or very little people go to the park, then me, myself, I don't feel like going to that park too. I don't feel that safe. But
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So this idea of kind of the eyes on the streets is, so when you have more people on the street is feels safer, right?
Yes, true.
Yes. Yeah. So similar concept when it comes to designing an open space.
So I guess this is also one of the strategy that you use in this project as well.
Yes. So like more people in the park also means that more eyes, more people can watch. So if there was an issue or some accident, you can count on other people to get help that you need.
That's a very, very good information we got from you, and we can really use that. And not only in Thailand, but other countries as well.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was some samples we heard from you from the Hinkay Park. And then I also heard that you're in the University of Washington was like the first university that was closed, if we go back 2 years ago from the pandemic COVID-19. And then what happened after that? I heard you did something very interesting.
So after our university is closed, well, actually not just the university, so many places are closed, during the pandemic. So for example, like in Seattle, one of the biggest challenges that we have is the number of homeless people, right? People on the streets. And before the pandemic, they can go to the community center, they can go to a library to use the washing facility, right? But during the pandemic, when all the places are closed, they have no place to go. So very simple thing like washing your hands. becomes so difficult for people who live on the streets. And so we were approached by a homeless advocacy organization called Real Change in Seattle. They were interested in getting help to create washing facilities for homeless people, so people on the streets. And so a group of us came together. So two architectural faculty members, myself, and then a former student who is a professional landscape architect. So we came together to design this a sort of a DIY urban hand washing station that anybody can build. And so we came up with a prototype. We worked with a homeless shelter here in right next across the street from our university. And after we had our first unit installed, we had we put the project on the social media, and then people started to find out about this project. And so the work got out, and so people have been adapting and building these units. So it become this kind of bottom-up DIY process that helped to address a very challenging issue for the homeless population here in Seattle.
The reason why I brought up this question is that, I just want to show to our audience that, not only they might be curious, you are a professor in a university and you also do landscape project and all, and we're talking about developing the landscapes. And so what does it have to do? We're not only concerned about, going to that landscapes and develop it or making buildings. That's not the main point, but I just want to show them that as a professor, teaching in a university, but we also care about the people. We also give that to the people as well. So maybe you can share that point with us.
Absolutely. So I think the main mission for architects and landscape architects is to create places that people can enjoy, right? Yes. So our job is focused on creating places, but ultimately is the people that we are serving, right? True. And then as professors, our role is not just to teach at the university. I think there are opportunities for us to work with local community as well, especially for public universities like ours. We have a mission to serve the public, and these are also these projects are also great opportunity for students to learn firsthand. So real life, real world experiences that could be a very important part of their education. And so by involving students with project in the community, they can learn more about, for example, what we talked about before, how to communicate better with stakeholders and constituents. And they can also learn firsthand, some of the real life struggle people are having, so they become more sensitive to those issues when they graduate from school and work in a profession.
I truly agree with that, because as a professor, as yourself teaching in a university, it's not just about teaching. The students can really go and see what the actual world is happening, or when they meet with the real obstacles, how do they solve, how do they overcome that, and they really meet the people and communicate.
Yes, absolutely.
Was the result different from only teaching students from the textbooks or in university, and then the outcome when they go to the local communities and meet with the people, engage and communicate more?
Yes. I mean, the students always tell me how transformative it is to actually meet the people that that we're trying to serve, through the project that we design. And this, so like meeting with people, listening to them, learning from their kind of life experiences, are just as educational as things that they may be learning from the textbook.
So I believe that is more sustainable in the future as well, because after they graduate, they have to come and work in the real world, and this is the real thing that they're going to face.
Yes. Yeah. they will be more prepared when they go into the profession.
So when I mentioned the word sustainable, maybe you can share with us here, because here us in Thailand, we're from the City Transformation and Public Policy Institute. So maybe some information or knowledge that you can share with us, how we could make this sustainable in the future?
Yes. So I think speaking of sustainability, obviously it had to do with things that are much longer term, right? But there are also things that we can do in the shorter term. So, for example, what I mentioned about participation in building capacity, those require things that can happen right away, right? And also like immediate outcome that people they can feel that they have actually achieved something. So I think we need to aim at both kind of short-term and long-term outcomes. So that we need short-term outcomes to build trust, to build capacity step by step. And then also we need to kind of keep our kind of vision in the longer term. So we need to address like these kind of structural barriers that may prevent people from becoming involved in the project. There may be a disparity in terms of kind of access to goods and services, different level of kind of capacity between ordinary citizens and professional communities. Right. So we need to look at both kind of longer term and shorter term kind of aspect of a project.
Right. Okay. So maybe I think we have one last question here, about 5 more minutes before we end our sessions. So maybe you can share with us here about the trend of community design in the future, in your point of view, because I guess it's different in the States and in Thailand, but in your point of view, what would it be in the future?
Yes. So communities are always kind of shifting, right? And I think one of the shift that I've noticed in recent time is that traditionally communities are defined by some sort of spatial boundary, right? So a neighborhood or a village, right? It's a geographically kind of bound community, but increasingly, we have also seen communities that are formed through social media, for example. People that live in different places but are connected through telecommunications, through some other means, and also there's a much greater kind of mobility for people these days, right? So we move around.
Me right now.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So we were connected using Zoom, right? So there are different ways that people can become connected, which is great. There are more ways for people to connect. Right? There are more ways the community can begin to emerge, right? And so this actually opens the door for a lot of different forms of connectivity, and also for communities that traditionally have been lacking in resources, to be able to connect with resources from outside that historically they may not be able to access, right? So I think a very important trend for community-based design is to look at like resources and people, and also expertise and knowledge beyond these kind of traditional forms of community, right? So by involving the volunteers that may live in a different part of a city, right? Local community can tap into kind of more resources, things that they may not have been able to access before. And also for the volunteer, they may find new opportunity to learn a new skill or become connected to issues that they care about, right? So these kind of untapped social capital in society could become could explode, right? In a sense, to become much more useful. And these are kind of things that we can leverage to make our society better. The resources that we were not able to access before.
That's great. So there was one thing, maybe we have maybe one or two left right now
Sure.
here about the social medias or the technologies that we have right now. Do you think that really helps make us more convenient? It really helps to make the work of our community design better nowadays? Does it really help us to improve?
Yes, I think there's opportunity to use social media to reach out to a wider audience, right? So like when you need to like do fundraising, for example, right? So
Yes.
crowdfunding, it's a way of like, accessing resources that may not be available for a project or for a social group, right? So power of kind of social media to be able to kind of find a wider audience, I think is one very important advantage that we need to access.
Great. So I totally agree with you because I think it helps us to reach out more to the people easier. And then we can communicate and stay close to each other, just like you and me, that we're halfway around the world, but we can still communicate and talk and share this great information.
Yes.
So it's a good thing that we hear all this information from you because you're the expertise. And from the beginning, I thought we were going to have like a very serious talk, but no, you totally blown up my mind here. We have a very casual and enjoyable talk, and you also gave me a lot of wide open experienced eyes that being a professor teaching in university doesn't mean that you only teach from a textbook or teach in a university, but you also take part in many projects and you brought your students outside as well. So I think this is a good examples that we can also use that in Thailand here as well for our education as the point of a professor teaching University of Washington in Seattle. You share a lot of knowledge that you can actually bring your students out and meet up with the people, the local communities, the private sectors, the government, and how we can overcome all of those obstacles. I believe we all face problems and obstacles, but we can always find the best solution. And from I gather from you is that stop waiting for the people to come to see you, but always go out and see the people, meet up with them, what they're doing right now, and make them feel as comfort as possible. Communicate a lot, safety as well as they're concerned that we've met in the project. So for all of that information, we're really happy. I'm glad to have you here with us. Great talk here. I'd love to talk with you more, but I think it's come to an ending here. Thank you very much once again here, Professor Jeffrey HOU from the University of Washington, Seattle. Must appreciate your time here from the City of Transformation and Public Policy Institute here in Bangkok, Thailand. We love to hear from you. Maybe we'll have a next talk very, very soon. Thank you very much for your time here, for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
ขอบคุณค่ะ